Good morning, YouTube family. Welcome back to the STi build series videos. We got the valve cover seals in. I ran into town last night, picked up the valve cover seals, so we should be able to get this motor ready to drop in today and hopefully back in the car today. First thing we're going to do is swap out these valve cover seals. That definitely is one of the most common failures I see on a Subaru motor, is the valve cover seals leaking. Just because it's a horizontal motor, so there's always oil right on the bottom of the valve cover seal, just always sitting there, no matter what. It's not like a Evo where the valve cover's on top, you know, there's not constantly oil just pooling up right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap out these valve cover seals. These seals leak so bad. It's like one of the worst leaks I've ever seen in my life. So let's go ahead and get them swapped out. We're gonna have to pull off the coil packs right here. There's two 12mm bolts and then a hose up here. And then there will be 8 10mm bolts holding the valve cover onto the head. These seals have definitely been replaced before, guys. All this orange sealant, that definitely is not on there from the factory. So I don't know if they ran OEM seals in here, but these things, like I said, leak so bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean all this up. Maybe just a wire brush to get all this orange sealant off. And then we also need to get this head cleaned up because I don't wanna go through this again. So on the head itself, I'm gonna be using some 3M high-powered brake cleaner. That should get all of the oil and grease off there. You don't want anything on there when you go to throw the new seal on because it could potentially leak once again. One thing I do love to use on aluminum is this mag wheel cleaner. This stuff does wonders on aluminum. So here's what the valve cover looks like before. That looks good, right? That's good enough. But if I can make it look better, you know I'm gonna make it look better. All right, guys, the valve cover's clean, the head is clean. We are ready to throw it back together. Now, I feel like there's always so much debate whether or not to use any sort of sealant on the valve cover seals. I've always had really good luck and success with 3Bond, the 1215 series. It's the same stuff I used when I assembled my Evo 10 motor. I think I used it like on the case halves or something. I've used it on valve cover seals quite a few times, and it's always worked absolutely perfect as long as you're using OEM Subaru gaskets. Every time I've used aftermarket gaskets, they leak every single time. But if you use OEM seals and that 3Bond 1215, just a little bit of it, just a light coat of it, it works pretty good. I've never had leaks doing it that way, so that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. I don't know if you're supposed to. I don't know if Subaru recommends it. That's what I do. It's worked good for me. All right, we got the sealant on both sides of the gasket, or the seal, on all 3 seals. Valve cover is ready to go back on the motor. Now what I'm going to be doing is installing the valve cover onto the motor, tightening all the bolts, the 8 bolts down by hand, letting it sit for about 30 minutes, and then coming back and torquing them down. The reason I'm not going to torque them down all the way right at first, right at the beginning, we got to let the sealant kind of settle and set up a little bit, dry just a little bit, and then we can go ahead and torque them down. it's been about 30 minutes. Time to go ahead and torque these down. So these go to 4.7 foot-pounds, which transfers over to 56.4 inch-pounds, I believe. And there's a certain sequence that they recommend tightening the bolts in. It goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, or something along those lines. You guys will see as I'm tightening them down. So yeah, 4.7 foot-pounds or 56.4 inch-pounds. Let's get it. All right, my dudes, I'm gonna go ahead and bang out the passenger side real quick. You guys already know the drill. All right, my dudes, the valve cover seals are all finished up, ready to go. Next thing I'm gonna move on to is changing out the timing belt. This is recommended at 105,000 miles, but being that I have the motor out already, it's gonna be much easier to swap it while the motor's out of the car versus in the car. First thing we need to do is remove the crank pulley. It's a 22mm nut, and I'm just gonna use my 1/2 inch impact and impact that, did I say nut? Impact the bolt off there. It's a bolt, not a nut. Next up, we have 4 bolts on this outer timing cover on the driver's side of the car, all 10mm. On the passenger side outer timing cover, there are 3. Now we got the center timing cover. Looks like there is 7 or 8 10mm. Now we have access to the timing belt. First thing I'm gonna do is put this bolt back in the crank and then grab a breaker bar and turn the motor over until it's at top dead center. So how I know it's at TDC or top dead center, there is a line right here on the cam or the crank gear, and then a line right there on that crank gear little timing belt guide. If those two are lined up and the lines on the cam gears are lined up with the notches on the timing cover, then that means you're at top dead center. We can go ahead and start removing some of these old timing belt pulleys. So I'm gonna start with the bottom one down here. It's a 14mm bolt on all of them except for the small one up here is a 12mm. These 2 cam gears over here will spin a little bit when you pull the timing belt off, so don't be scared when those spin. On 3 of the 4 cam gears, there are these cam, or the timing belt little guides, I guess you could call them. Use a little, I think it's a 5mm Allen head to pull these guys off. Or you can just loosen them up. You don't need to take them all the way off. There also is one right in the center for the crank. You can go ahead and throw on all of the new idler pulleys. I'm gonna leave that bottom one off right there. So I'm gonna throw that one on, the small one on, and then the new timing belt tensioner as well. Before we move on to getting the timing belt on, we gotta make sure all of our timing belt marks are lined up. So on the passenger side intake cam gear, meaning the top, line on the cam goes to line on the timing belt cover. And then on the bottom, there's 2 lines, which is gonna line up with 2 lines on the exhaust cam gear, and then line over here on the exhaust cam gear is gonna go to the side of the cover. Same thing on the driver's side. Might have to pull this cover off, get an Allen head wrench on it, and get it back in place. This one stayed in place, thankfully, so I just gotta mess with this one now. As soon as we get all 4 of those lined up and the crank gear lined up properly, which already is, because that's how it was when you took the timing belt off, we can grab our new timing belt, get it on the motor, get that lower pulley on, and then pull the pin out of this tension right here, throw the covers back on, and move on. So on the timing belt itself, this dotted line right here is for the crank pulley. And as you can see right there, there are 3 arrows pointing that way. These arrows point toward the driver's side of the engine. Looks like this gear right here slipped a little bit, so I'm gonna try to get that to go back in place. Perfect. Let's hope everything else stays on. I can get this lower pulley on and we'll be on our way. So I'll give you guys a little rundown of how it should look. The crank gear line should be lined up with a dotted line on the timing belt, line on the timing belt, line on the cam gear, line on the timing cover, all lined up. Those 2 lines right there lined up. Those 3 lined up. Those 2 on the gears are lined up. Those 3 are lined up. Those 3 are lined up. If all that looks just like that, there is a pin on the tensioner. Go ahead, pull that pin out like that. It probably won't move much at all until you turn the motor over. But before you do that, I would recommend getting this little guy right here and setting all of the clearances for the guides. That's how that guy works. You just slide it in there between the timing belt and the guide, push down on the guide and tighten up the bolts. Just like that, new timing belt is on. Last thing to do is to torque down all of the pulleys and the tensioner. Let's go ahead, throw the timing covers onto the motor, and then we can get the motor off the stand, get it back on the hoist, on the engine hoist right here, and get our flywheel and our new clutch on. This guy right here is probably one of the most critical things to get torqued down properly. So the torque spec on the flywheel is 53 foot-pounds. The way you want to torque it down is kind of like the same way you torque down a wheel, the crisscross pattern. So you're going to start there, 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 and there. 53 foot-pounds on this guy. How I'm going to do it, grab my 22mm socket with the breaker bar, put it on there, hold the crank on this side, and then with this side with the torque wrench, torque that guy down, and we can get the clutch on. Dope, the flywheel's all good to go. We do need to get the pilot bearing in there still, but that is included in the clutch kit, which brings us to what clutch am I running in this car? Bam, bam, bam. As you can see, we have an Action clutch. Let's go ahead, open it up. I've never ran this brand before. I hear absolutely amazing things from other people. They are a new sponsor for the channel, but you guys already know if I don't like the clutch, I will tell you. I'll be straight up with you. But based off what everyone else says, I know my boy Low Tech runs this Action clutch in his car, in his 350Z. So I know these are very nice clutches. If everything goes good with this clutch, I may end up swapping over the Evo 10 clutch because of the lockout issue over to an Action clutch. Ooh boy, look at that brand new clutch disc. Make sure you don't get any oil or grease on that clutch disc, guys, because that is kind of a pain in the ass to clean. So I'm gonna keep it in that, or the bubble wrap, set over there. They included everything. We got the clutch disc, that is gonna be the throwout bearing. Ooh, we got a sticker, we even got a lanyard. Wow, we got everything. This will be the clutch alignment tool. I already have about 1,000 of those. And the pressure plate itself. Hey, look at that beautiful thing. Sick, guys. If you want to pick one of these clutches up, I'll have it linked down in the description box below. I'll keep you posted on how good I like this clutch. So on the instruction sheet, or the guideline thing here, it shows 500 miles of normal stop and go traffic to ensure proper brake-in period. First thing we're going to do is grab our disc here. So there's only one way this disc can go. The flat part faces the pressure plate. First thing we need to do is get our new pilot bearing installed. I'm gonna grab some brake cleaner, clean off the flywheel surface where the clutch disc is gonna sit. All right, before we go over there, make sure that ring is on the back side of the pressure plate. Grab this box, grab this clutch alignment tool. We don't need the throwout bearing quite yet. And let's go throw this clutch on the motor. So how I'm gonna do this, I'm just gonna grab the clutch alignment tool. And guys, make sure the clutch hub or the thicker part is facing that flywheel. I'm just gonna set it up on there. Just like that. It's gonna hold it in place, and then grab our pressure plate, get the pressure plate on. There are some dowels the pressure plate has to sit on, so make sure you get those lined up, and then we can get all of the, I believe there's 8 bolts on there total for the pressure plate. Before I get the pressure plate on though, I'm gonna clean that surface area up as well, just like I did with the flywheel. So the clutch bolts are gonna be torqued down to 141 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. I believe that converts over to like 14 foot-pounds. But my foot-pound torque wrench doesn't go down that low. Same concept as the flywheel, go crisscross pattern. So there, 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 there. You guys get the drill. All right, bros, motor is all complete, ready to go in the car. There's one more thing I want to do before we put the motor in the car, and that is just simply clean off these splines on the transmission. Wire brush them, get them nice and clean, and then throw a little bit of high temp grease on there just to make sure it's going to slide in and out of the clutch disc fine with no issues whatsoever. We don't want it binding up. And also I would recommend greasing up the pivot on the clutch fork as well. We got the motor into the car. The very next thing I'm gonna do, and always the first thing I do as soon as I get a motor in, throw a few bell housing bolts in and then engage the clutch fork onto the, so when you push on the clutch fork, it pushes the throwout bearing onto the clutch pressure plate. After that, we're gonna bolt on the clutch master cylinder or the slave cylinder, go in the car and make sure the clutch works. I've learned my lesson with not doing that, and I've gotten a whole car together before and having to take it all back apart just because like the throwout bearing won't clip in properly is a straight pain in the ass. So I'm gonna go ahead, do that right now, make sure we are all good to go, and then we can move on from there. If we push this clutch fork toward the back of the car and it clips in, we should be good to go. Yep, we should be good, guys, but just to make sure, I'm gonna throw this on real quick and make sure the clutch works as it should. All right, this is the moment of truth. Cool, we are all good to go. Unfortunately, guys, I do need to wrap up today's video right here. We made some good progress on the car today. I was hoping to get it all the way done, but I'm gonna head out in the shop early tomorrow morning, get this thing finished up. There's not much left to do, honestly. As soon as we get the motor in, it's probably like another hour from there, but I do not have the time today. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out tomorrow's video to see if this thing actually is gonna run again and to see how good this clutch works. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out. Really appreciate all the love and support. I'll see you guys tomorrow.